Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for today's facial recognition media availability. We'll hear from two speakers today. Warren Driechel, the Superintendent of the Information Technology Division, who will speak to the facial recognition solution, its function, and privacy, followed by Devin Laforce, Superintendent of the Research and Development Division, who will speak about the internal process for using facial recognition, as well as the operational value the solution provides to our investigators. Following the formal portion of this program, we will take questions from the media. Please be sure to keep your mics muted until that time. Without further ado, I'd like to invite Superintendent Warren Driechel to speak.
Okay, good afternoon. So my name is Warren Driechel, and I'm the Superintendent of the Information Technology Division, responsible for technology delivery in the Edmonton Police Service. I'm here today to speak to you about the facial recognition software solution we recently rolled out within the Edmonton Police Service. The last time I spoke with the media was in early 2020, when we were still very much in the research phase, looking into different companies that had facial recognition options suitable for law enforcement purposes. During our research phase, we reached out to a number of Canadian police agencies, including the Calgary Police Service, to understand the full benefits of facial recognition. Since then, and after much consideration, we have procured a solution called NeoFace Reveal through the NEC Corporation of America. Facial recognition has been around longer than we think, and there are many different ways it's applied in today's world. Most of us use it every day on our phones to log into different apps with ease without really thinking about it. Hundreds of law enforcement agencies across the world are also using facial recognition to help expedite their investigations. I can tell you that the Edmonton Police Service is using the solution for two primary purposes. First, to aid in the identification of individuals involved in criminal investigations, and to help positively identify individuals taken into custody who may provide false information about their identity. As you're likely aware, the EPS maintains a mugshot database of photos of people who have been criminally charged with a crime. That database is maintained under the Identification of Criminals Act, and it works in conjunction with the Calgary Police Services database, enabling us to share data securely. When an investigator has a suspect or person of interest they cannot identify in their investigation, they have the ability to submit their photo to a group of trained technicians within the EPS who can run the suspect's photo through the facial recognition solution. There's never a guarantee that investigators will get a match, but it is definitely a possibility and could save our officers a lot of time when that does happen. Think of facial recognition in the same way you think of fingerprinting. We maintain a database of fingerprints, and when a fingerprint is found at the scene of a crime, it can be compared against the other fingerprints within that database to check for a positive match. The facial recognition solution we are using works that same way. Now, that you understand how we will be using the solution, let me tell you how we won't be using it. We will not be applying the solution over live CCTV feeds or over social media platforms for surveillance purposes. While there are many different versions of facial recognition technologies out there, the solution we are using will be applied to a very specific way, as I mentioned before, where suspect photos are only matched against the joint mugshot database shared with the Calgary Police Service. As the superintendent in charge of the Information Technology Division, I could tell you that we have looked into the privacy implications of the solution to ensure any data collected is done so in compliance with FOIP legislation and the Identification of Criminals Act. We have also submitted a privacy impact assessment to the Office of the Information and Privacy Commissioner of Alberta to further ensure that the way in which information is collected respects privacy legislation and individual rights. If any of you have any further questions about privacy or the facial recognition solution itself, I would be happy to answer those questions after the formal portion of this media availability. I would like to now turn this over to Superintendent Devin Laforce to speak about the operational value and processes in place with respect to this innovative solution. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Superintendent Driechel, and good afternoon to all of the journalists who have joined us today. I'm Devin Laforce, and I'm the Superintendent of the Research and Development Division. Before I recently moved here, I oversaw the Investigative Support Division, which housed the Facial Recognition Forensic Video Unit. I was lucky to have had the opportunity to see the facial recognition project through, and my role here today is to tell you a little bit about how our internal process works for using this technology and to help everyone understand the benefits this solution can bring to our investigations and our city. As mentioned earlier, a select group of trained technicians within the Edmonton Police Service are the only ones who have login access to the facial recognition application. What I mean by that is that each individual police officer cannot simply log into the facial recognition application and use it as they see fit. An investigator will have to submit their request to our forensic video unit, and then the trained technicians run suspect images through facial recognition for potential matches. The technician, who is a vital part of this process, will analyze the search results from facial recognition and validate whether they support the match. The technician would then provide a report back to the investigating officer for further follow-up. It is important to understand that nothing is concluded by facial recognition technology on its own. No identification is made and there is no power of arrest. A technician confirms the match and further investigative steps are required by police before anyone can be arrested and charged. Identifying a suspect might sound like an easy task in policing, but this process often is complicated and time-consuming. There are many files that are not adequately concluded because a suspect cannot be identified. When a file is not concluded with a charge, we know this can heavily weigh on victims of crimes, their families, and the community. Further, if we can identify offenders in need of health or support from the social sector, we can help navigate that process and better address root causes and long-term solutions. Whereas without solving the crime in the first place, there simply is no next step. Facial recognition provides us with a technological advantage to identify suspects that we did not have previously. While the solution has just begun to be rolled out across the service at the beginning of this year, we have already realized some benefits. For example, in October of last year, police responded to an aggravated assault in the area of 109th Street and Jasper Avenue. One person had been stabbed and another had suffered a significant head injury. While the investigating members had some evidence to work from, they did not have enough information to identify suspects and lay charges. Some images were gathered and we utilized the facial recognition solution to see if it would help. Through that process and in consideration of other evidence, the identities of the suspects became known and verified, and 3 offenders were charged in late January. In addition to this example, I can tell you that Homicide Section recently applied the solution to one of the ongoing investigations, which has led to some progressive developments and leads that they otherwise did not have. While I cannot share more about the specific homicide file at this point, I know the investigators are hopeful that they will be able to conclude the file and appreciative of the new investigative aid. As our world and technology continues to evolve, there is expectation that we also need to evolve as a police service to keep up. It is also our job to keep the citizens of Edmonton safe and solve the crimes committed in our communities. Superintendent Driechel earlier spoke about our chosen facial recognition solution and how we are ensuring privacy by design. This is through both physical construction as well as administrative controls. We are confident that this facial recognition tool will keep our communities safe and secure, progress our criminal investigation in ways we couldn't without it, and that we continue to protect rights and privacy. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We'll now open up questions for the media. You'll have the opportunity to ask a question and a follow-up, and then if we have some time, we'll run through a second round of questions. Please specify who your question is directed to. So we'll start with CBC. I believe they're just recording online, but I will give them a moment to... Is there anyone on the line from CBC? Okay. We'll move to Sarah Comedina with Global. Sorry.
Hi. Thanks for taking my question. You mentioned that this is much like how you take a fingerprint, and I'm just wondering if you can tell me how effective facial recognition is in, or if there's a percentage on how effective that is compared to what it's like when you do get a fingerprint, or compared to that.
So maybe Devin, I'll lean on some of your experience as well, but I mean, the solution only provides a suggestion based on certain parameters and points within the data. It's still up to an investigator to kind of confirm that information. You know, the level of accuracy and the reliability sits in the data itself, but you know, we depend on that investigator's eyes to kind of confirm the information in the suggestion. Devin, maybe I'll lean on you to kind of back some of that up from your experience with the fingerprints.
Yeah, for sure. And thanks. You know, it's kind of much like a fingerprint. It really depends on kind of what quality you have to work with. So that'll depend a little bit on the quality of the image and what's taken from a scene or whatever that looks like when we actually query it into the system. As far as the actual accuracy of the instrument, it's actually come a long ways. I know I just actually recently came across an article through NIST, which is a National Institute of Standards and Technology, and they basically have said that this solution is 99% effective. Of course, that is kind of contingent upon a high quality image, yes, front facing and kind of similar to the image that we have captured in our database. So outside of that, we don't, it's hard to tell until we get into the casework.
And when it comes to how this will be used when you are looking for a suspect, you mentioned that social media and CCTV footage won't be constantly monitored to find that. How does, if you can just explain to me how it will work when it does come to the CCTV footage, or if you would ever use social media in some instance to kind of match those identities?
I guess I can start and you can finish this one if you like. But yeah, it's absolutely separate and distinct. So we have, there's a lot of, reasons why we wouldn't go to a monitoring or surveillance kind of footage for CCTV, as well as public images on social media. And so the way that our product is completely separate and distinct from those applications. And so it is kind of linked to our mugshot database, where we kind of compile images based on people charged, arrested and charged with a criminal offense, and query it against that that database not accessible outside of that.
If I can add, one of the important points of that whole conversation is we're not going to be using the technology to monitor those types of environments. So it's not like we're going to have the solution actively running over CCTV or social media to be looking for information. Now, in terms of CCTV, we may get a still image or a video image of a criminal event, and we may obtain that piece of CCTV or video footage as a digital exhibit. That could definitely be used kind of because it is, evidence or information leading to the offense or the investigation. That could be used. I guess what's the salient point there is that we're not using a solution to live stream, monitor, or surveil those type of environments.
We'll move on to CTV. Carrie, are you on the line?
Hi, yeah, thanks for taking my question. I guess I'm just wondering, you mentioned a couple of examples. When did you guys start implementing this? And are there any statistics on how many people you've accurately identified using it?
So the solution just went live here at the beginning of the year in a production environment, in a very limited production environment with, like we said, very select group of users. I don't have any stats on any of how many hits they've gotten back on it or anything like that. It is in its infancy in terms of our use and rollout. We definitely want it to be transparent and get in front of the public and talk about it. But I think that probably more important to say is that we're alive to the fact that we probably will be auditing the system, looking at the use and stuff like that, definitely over the next year, a couple of years, to determine how much it's being used. So I have no stats for you today, but it's just only been in production for a couple of weeks.
Perfect. Do you have a follow-up question, Carrie?
Yeah, I'm not sure if this is one that you guys will be able to answer, but so this has been compared to a fingerprint. Once things progress to like the charge and a court case, does the facial recognition hold legal weight yet as evidence?
Speak to that. Right, live. Sorry. Yes. So yes, it does carry some legal weight, but what the weight is not the weight of an identification. So it's not to the level of a fingerprint or certainly like a DNA match. And so because of that, we have that human in the loop that completes that verification process, but that still doesn't meet the threshold of what would be deemed as an identification for court use. And so what happens after that is kind of subsequent investigative steps by the assigned or primary investigator that would then have to kind of confirm that the person is an actual suspect and kind of link them up with the context pieces of the crime.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to the Edmonton Journal. Dustin, do we have you on the line?
Yes, hello, thank you. I think my question is for Superintendent Driechel. Wondering if you've heard back from the Privacy Commissioner. Is it all A-OK? Were there any concerns raised about use of this technology?
Hi, thanks for the question. We submitted our privacy impact assessment several months ago. We haven't heard back on the final results of the privacy impact assessment. There's a couple of points I want to touch on. I think the first thing is that we do have our own in-house privacy counsel. Whenever we do develop a technology solution, we really lean on them to kind of guide the technology development as well as the workflows to ensure that we're going to be compliant with the legislation once we do go to deployment. We recognize oftentimes that the privacy impact assessments can take a long time to get back. I do know, though, that this technology is definitely of interest to the Privacy Commissioner, and we have engaged with him a couple times on different aspects of that privacy impact assessment. There has also been some kind of dialogue back and forth between at a national level on privacy around facial recognition and asking our feedback on this type of technology. So we're definitely very engaged with them, but we don't have any full results back yet.
Dustin, do you have a follow-up?
I do, thank you. My follow-up is, do we know how much this is costing EPS, or is it believed that this is actually going to save money based on, resources? And is there a ballpark for that?
Yeah, so we did establish a capital budget for this. That's available, I guess, as a public document if required. There was, we came in within budget on this project. I guess in terms of the value for the investment, I can tell you this, and I say this often, and it's without being, flippant about it, but video and still images and digital exhibits are a tidal wave that are hitting our organization already. Like, our members are inundated every day with tons of these type of video stills and video clips where they're trying to identify suspects. They spend countless hours trying to identify suspects in a manual process. Other members are drawn into that kind of investigation to assist. I think that we will see that as a net cost or savings to the organization, there will be some investigative time that is saved, at least on the front end, just with helping to assist potential suspects. We do recognize that there's always going to be the follow-through work to confirm the information, but I think that as a impact to the organization, I think there will be a benefit.
Thank you. And do we have anyone online from Omni? Okay, I believe they're just recording. We'll circle back to Global. Sarah Comedina, do you have another question?
Yes, I think when this is going to be more out there, there's going to be a lot of people concerned about privacy concerns, and I know we did touch on that. But if you can just talk to me more about the steps that have been taken to ensure that people aren't going to be monitored online when they're at the mall. There's not somebody watching them. I can just kind of see the comments, and I just want to be clear on how to relay that information.
I can probably start, and I can probably turn over to Superintendent Laforce. At a technical level, the system itself is in a closed environment that's secured. The data is secure, so whoever's using it, it's not available to people outside of that closed group of users. I think what's also important is that the architecture itself, the technology itself, it's not linked to any of those live systems. Like the solution itself is in, like I said, in a very closed kind of environment. It's not like we can point it readily at CCTV with just the click of a mouse. It's not architectured that way. I think the last point from a technical standpoint is we can audit the system. So anybody that accesses it, we can see who's used it. And it's built purposely for that reason, for those kind of concerns. And I think that that's important part of this, because we recognized obviously the community concerns around privacy are going to be one of the biggest aspects of this. And maybe I'll turn over to Superintendent Laforce. He could talk about some of the checks and balances from a supervisory and user perspective.
Yeah, for sure. So privacy and security, obviously, absolutely vital, to this tool. And so what we've done, we have obviously supervisors as far as being able to approve the image. There's checks and balances in the form going to the investigators so that they don't skew the weight of that evidence. Kind of back to kind of very specifically the private and security pieces, as Warren has stated. You can't actually even plug it into kind of our video feeds and surveillance pieces to even get into that surveilled environment. And because of the legislation, certainly controls around the Identification of Criminals Act, the policies, procedures, and administrative controls we put into place organizationally. And so we are building in right now an audit process as well as a review process of our policies and procedures to make sure that our membership is compliant, to make sure that our rules are compliant, and actually just to make sure that we're receiving or getting the value of the tool that was kind of expected with us implementing this technology solution.
And I did just have one more. This is in the beginning stages, but I'm sure it's quite exciting as a police force to see this technology coming into play. At the very beginning, where it is right now, like where can you see this tool in 5 years? Like, what do you hope the future of this tool is?
Just certainly myself, it's just kind of increases and improvements around accuracy. And so again, as the tool kind of gets better and better, then that should kind of increase the solvability of crime, which decreases the work from our members and keeps our community safe. So I just see that progression of things as far as accuracy and improvements happening with time.
I just want to follow up to the question about the auditing and the use of it and stuff like that. So when I talk about the auditing, it's something where we can go in and see who's done it. One of the things too that's built into the workflow is every search is linked to an event. So the searches aren't just random. It's not like somebody can log onto the system and just start searching it for fun. It needs to be linked to an actually event or a criminal investigation, or the use of it, is legitimate. So I just wanted to kind of reiterate that if there was any confusion on my comments.
Thank you, Sarah. Carrie from CTV, do you have another question?
Sure. This one, I don't know if it's maybe a little bit too technical, but we see a lot of the security footage. You guys release images to us a lot, and they're not always the best quality. Is there like a certain level quality of photo that there needs to be for this to work? Does it work with kind of like your average security camera?
I'll turn that one over to Devin. I think that speaks more to the kind of the accuracy of the clarity of the photo and the workflows they have around it. So I'll turn over to Devin.
Sure. And really it's kind of the whole, absolutely, when we have poor quality images, whether it's from the camera or even perhaps a bad angle, or you only get a partial face of a suspect, all of those things are going to impact the accuracy. And so there is a threshold score, I believe, in the solution there where it'll even start the query. But even when you get the query results, obviously, the more, the better the quality of the image and the more front-facing that image is, then the more likely that we're going to get kind of a positive match. But we haven't really dove deeper to kind of know what those percentages or what that looks like at this point.
Carrie, do you have a follow-up?
No, I think that's everything. Thank you.
No problem. And finally, Dustin from the Journal.
I'm good, thank you.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today. If you have any further questions, you can email me and I can definitely look into your inquiries. Have a great day.